Hey everybody, so quickly before we start today, I just wanted to announce that I've decided to open up my own Patreon page, so if you wish to support my creative endeavors, perks start as little as $1. Join the Bacon Brigade today. Now on to the video. Twisted Metal has been around for a really long time and has followed a very similar formula for most of its existence. Much like the fighting game has the tower mode, Twisted Metal has the main arcade mode, which consists of several levels back to back followed by a final boss. After which you get a character-specific ending. Rinse and repeat. And with that formula going on for so long, you're gonna have a lot of different endings. By my count, there are 100 different endings for the series thus far, assuming I didn't miss any. Plus the lost endings to the first game, which account for an additional 3 endings that are entirely different from the actual endings that ended up in the final game. While all the other wishes in that game are the same as the lost endings, just slightly changed. Which brings the total up to 103 by my count. Well, technically 104, but we'll get to that. I won't be including the leaked original versions of the Twisted Metal Black endings because those were never officially released, but they're worth checking out if you have the stomach for it. So I'm going to pull off the largely fruitless task of ranking every single Twisted Metal ending from worst to best. Oh Jesus, what have I gotten myself into? So what exactly quantifies being a good ending versus a bad ending? Well, that's not an easy thing to answer. Obviously, a good chunk of it is presentation, the quality of animation, the production value, and uniqueness of what's shown. But then the other chunk, especially for the games that don't focus on their production value, is all about the effectiveness of the story presented. How character appropriate the ending is, the quality of the wish or the twist, how compelling the end result is, and of course whether or not the whole thing is stupid, cringeworthy, or makes you facepalm. Or on the flip side, if the ending is just plain cool. These endings essentially exist on a spectrum that has cool on one side and stupid on the other. Where it falls on that spectrum generally determines how compelling it is. This is a nuanced scoring system that takes a lot into account, but it's also a grading system that mostly consists of me flying by the seat of my pants based on gut feelings. Everyone's gonna have their own favorites and least favorites, so let's not get too hung up on the haves and have-nots. And just before we start, let's play a little game in the comments section. Let's just say that you, viewer, yes you, have just won Twisted Metal. You drive before Calypso and make a wish. Leave what you would wish for in the comments section below. But here's the twist. The first person to reply to you decides how the wish gets twisted. Let's have a little fun with this. Wish me luck, and hopefully I don't forget any endings. Oh yeah, and spoilers, obviously. So this one's a bit of a cheat because in Black, Minion doesn't actually have an ending, but the fact that he doesn't have an ending makes it the worst ending in the series by default. So despite Minion being responsible for some of my favorite storytelling in the entire series, the fact that it just cuts to black at the end of his story is kinda lame. Next.
We offer you one wish for your heroic and triumphant deeds! Your wish has been granted, driver!
Now, obviously you can't make an ending for a custom character. There's no way for them to make an ending for a character that's ultimately our own creation. They can't account for every possibility. So how do you handle this? The Tony Hawk's Pro Skater solution was to give you a bail montage instead of a character-specific skate montage. Twisted Metal 4's solution for a universal custom character as well as boss character ending is to pretend. Melvin speaks to the player as if they're making a wish, but in actuality he's speaking to nobody in particular in absolute silence. So my joke is, oh, it looks like my custom character is actually Gordon Freeman. Surely there was a better solution than this. This is just plain lame.
Your wish is for a clean, safe world for everyone to live in.
Oh man, the ending for Outlaw 3 and Twisted Metal 3 is so bad. So you're gonna notice that the early stages of this list contains a lot of Twisted Metal 3. Despite personally finding Twisted Metal 4 to be the worst game overall, I think 3 has the worst endings in the series on average. They all follow the exact same template. Car drives in, Calypso monologues for a second, ironic twist, thank you for playing Twisted Metal. Every single time, almost. And the worst of the worst for me is this. They wish for a crime-free world, and they get it. But you want to know what the horrible twist is? It puts them out of a job. The presentation is weak along with the rest of the third game's endings, but this one tries to treat the idea of a world without crime as a bad thing, as a twist for our two cops. Oh, so they and all other police officers would be out of work? And get a new job! It's laughable how it fails so badly at having a worthwhile twist. It's a rare ending that utterly fails at what it sets out to do, and it's just mind-numbingly dumb the way they try and play this one off, even for the standards of the game it's part of. And of course they could be trying to play it off as a joke, but the problem is, the joke isn't funny. To me, this is the ending that gets the wooden spoon as far as being an actual ending. I was originally going to put it a few entries down, but no, this is the worst.
You really want to be a rock star, huh? Totally, dude!
Twisted Metal Small Brawl is often considered the worst game in the series, but to me, obviously the premise is kinda stupid, but once you get past the premise, there's actually a good game in here. Unfortunately, the endings are all based off the terrible premise and not the solid gameplay, so many Small Brawl endings are gonna end up in the bottom half, and the worst of the worst? Hammerhead. Because it's a complete non sequitur. He wishes to be a rock star, and Calypso makes him the frontman in a boy band. Those aren't even remotely the same thing. He's not twisting the kid's words, and also, it's a really stupid ending on premise alone. The only thing that keeps this ending away from the bottom is that it's better animated and significantly better presented than anything in Twisted Metal 3.
The General wants the most powerful army ever amassed in the history of war!
So you may notice a pattern with this list that endings that are blatantly non sequiturs tend to place very low. To me, if you're gonna have a twist ending, it needs to make sense in a monkey's paw way, twisting the words of the person making the wish by either being literal or using double meanings of words to your advantage. There needs to be a logic to how the wishes get twisted, which is usually what happens. General Warthog in Twisted Metal 4, however, has no such logic. He wishes to command the greatest army in the world so he can lead them into many glorious victories, so then he ends up being turned into a toy to command an entire army of toy soldiers. You see what I mean? That's not even twisting his words. It's not even slightly connected to what he asked for. It's a complete non sequitur, or the biggest stretch of stretches if we're being ultra generous. But if you can just twist the wish into whatever you want, then there's no logic. Somebody could wish for a popsicle and somehow end up with their mother dead. You need to have consistent rules. So for that reason, as well as just not being very interesting otherwise, General Warthog's ending places this low.
All I want now is to no longer be an outcast.
Twisted Metal 4's endings are a mixed bag, and this is a bit of rotten banana at the bottom of the bag. Orbital, a guy who had half his face burnt off from a biochemical weapon, wants to be normal again, but he phrases it like this.
I don't want to be the only one on the planet with only half a face.
The twist is so obvious that I genuinely can't understand why he would phrase it like that. It's so utterly contrived the way they bring the twist out of this ending. Exactly what you think is going to happen ends up happening. I'm gonna get a lot of mileage out of this clip, but for the first of many times...
Your wish is stupid.
I wish you'd just shut up!
Granted.
What?
On average, I think that Head On probably has the most consistent endings in the series, which is good because it also has the most at a whopping 17 by my count. But even the best games slip up every now and again. Case in point,
I don't even know you anymore! You can't live like this!
Shut up!
Head On replaces Twisted Metal 3 in the timeline, so they had the chance to correct the ultimate stupidity that was the Outlaw 3 ending, but the end result was an ending that's arguably even worse. Carl and Jamie Roberts didn't discuss what they wanted their wish to be before they won, and so they get into an argument in front of Calypso over whether they should wish to end the tournament forever or just cap Calypso where he stands, culminating with Carl in the most contrived way possible, accidentally wishing his sister would shut up, leading to her mouth disappearing. So what, Carl never mentioned his intention to kill Calypso beforehand? You'd think that would be something worth bringing up. It's frustrating to see characters acting this idiotic. For the sheer baffling stupidity of the characters involved, and the contrived nature of this ending and the wish, it's easily one of the worst they ever did. Unlike most endings in Twisted Metal 3 that attempt to be funny but ultimately fail, this ending attempts to be serious, but it just feels like a giant middle finger to you for playing the game. The only thing that keeps it from the bottom is the decent presentation of the cutscene, and the fact that there even was an attempt to begin with.
Your wish has been granted, driver!
Oh god, I don't want to have to try and navigate the minefield that is Drag Queen from Twisted Metal 4 for any longer than necessary, so let's make this quick. The long and the short of it is, this one is extremely cringeworthy, and I'm sure many would agree. The joke of the character is encompassed in the name itself. Drag Queen, aka Dennis Flanders, aka Petunia's Wish, involves some sort of live performance. We don't know the specifics because they don't speak during the final cutscene, but according to the manual, they wanted to headline an all-female Vegas dance venue. Okay, so my assessment of this ending has to do more with the character than the actual ending itself, but the entire premise of the character is mired in less than pleasant attitudes and tropes, while playing off certain things as jokes that with the benefit of hindsight probably shouldn't be jokes. Even beyond that, the entire wish and presentation of this scene is incredibly cringeworthy on its own merits. And I have a lot of questions. Why don't they speak? What is this performance they're doing? Am I supposed to laugh with this scene or at the scene? I just don't get it. It's just regrettable all around, and I kinda wish I didn't even need to bring it up, so let's just move on as quick as our feet will take us.
You said you could make me walk. Alright.
So this ending was actually cut from Small Brawl because Sony felt that it was too mean-spirited. In this game's interpretation, Axel is a kid in a wheelchair and his wish is to be able to walk. So Billy Calypso gives him a pair of mechanical pants that lets him do so, getting some serious Wallace and Gromit vibes here. Of course that doesn't really work out for Axel. This is another one of those tugging at my shirt collar endings. I don't think the developers had any malicious intent behind this ending, but it still feels like they played the whole wheelchair thing for laughs. Which is definitely mean-spirited and a bit cringeworthy. It's probably a good thing they cut this from the game and made Axel a secret character, but it's still an ending that exists, so I'm counting it.
They wish for plate of trash. Whole world of garbage.
Unfortunately, Trash Man is not played by Danny DeVito, but rather somebody who's played to sound very special, shall we say. He wants the whole world to be garbage, and so he's shrunken and put into a whole heap of garbage. Yeah, that borders on non sequitur. However, even beyond that, it's still a bad ending on its own merits. There's nothing about it that makes it stand out. The wish and end result has a lot in common with Trashman himself, and the, shall we say, questionable portrayal of Trashman as a character borders on collar-tuggingly awkward, so let's move on without a second thought. Actually, before we go, yo, what? Forget Danny DeVito, this guy's voiced by John St. John? I guess Trashman had more in common with Big the Cat than I thought.
Your wish is for people to see your inner child.
This is the first on my list of why would they wish for that endings. In Twisted Metal 3, Augur wishes for people to see his inner child. Literally, there's only one way this could have gone. It's such an obvious twist that it's almost insulting. So obvious, in fact, that I was almost half expecting a reverse double twist where this is exactly what Augur wanted, but given the tone of the game, doubtful. So once again,
Your wish is stupid.
So the wish is dumb, the presentation sucks, the entire premise is insulting, it's just bad.
Your wish is to stay home and watch your daytime TV.
Christ, this one's stupid. In fact, preemptively,
Your wish is stupid.
Granny Dread, the driver of Hammerhead in Twisted Metal 3, just wants to stay home and watch her daytime TV. Once again, why is this a thing you need to wish for? Seriously, once again, are Twisted Metal 3's endings meant to be serious, or are they meant to be played for laughs? Because if the latter, well, I'm not laughing, so it just feels like a giant middle finger. The only reason this one's slightly more ahead is that they contextualize her wish as being because her house keeps getting blown up by the members of the tournament. Personally, my solution would be to move to a different place, not join a tournament of death and wish upon a con artist.
Now your wish is to become one complete machine.
Axel's ending in 3 is so stupid. After freeing himself from his contraption in the last game, horribly scarring himself in the process, now he wants to become one complete machine with the contraption that he freed himself from. And Calypso, as a result, turns him into a watch? What? You see, the whole ironic twist thing is all well and good, but this is barely even an ironic twist. It borders on non sequitur, but at least there's an anorexically thin justification in that he wishes to become one complete machine, but that is a stretch if I ever saw one. But more damningly, it completely backtracks on Axel's great ending in the previous game, for reasons that are never adequately explained. It's lame, the presentation is weak, it's just plain bad.
So your wish is to forever hang with your homies?
You know, Thumper's ending in Twisted Metal 3 is yet another one that makes me yank at my shirt collar. When the POC character makes a wish to hang with his homies, there's some unhealthy connotations there with the phrasing. Especially considering you know that there's gonna be a twist, and you're wondering if they're actually gonna go there. Thankfully, the end result isn't quite as horrible as you think it's gonna be, but it's still incredibly tone-deaf, and even beyond that, the presentation is just kinda lame and basic. Plus, it's another one of those endings where you wonder, why would they even wish for that? If you're gonna hang out with your homies, hang out with your homies. No need to go to Calypso.
Your wish is stupid.
Your wish is to eat all the candy and ice cream you want?
This one's not only weak on its own merits, but it also manages to completely misunderstand Sweet Tooth's character. Needles Kane is a vicious, murderous, crazy clown. Despite the name of his car, wanting sweets hasn't really been a thing in his character outside of playing into his crazy persona a la the first game. More on that later. So having him want all the candy and ice cream he wants is dumb. But then the twist is even dumber. Oh, you eat too much candy, you'll need to get dental work. Haha, so zany. So for failing to understand the character and for being a lame wish with an even lamer twist in its own right, this ending can sit comfortably near the bottom of the list.
I wish the car accident that killed me and Mommy never happened.
So this is definitely a questionable creative decision if you ask me. As we'll get into, Grasshopper's ending in Twisted Metal 2 was surprisingly sweet, but in this case they go with an angle that Krista is angry at her father Calypso because she believes he just wanted her as another contestant for the tournament when Calypso could have just given Krista her mortal life back. But either way, she wins and has the opportunity to regain her life, but she instead wishes for the car accident that originally took her life in the Twisted Metal 2 prequel comic to have never happened, which results in her ending up in a coma with memories that may or may not have happened.
Oh no, I've gone cross-eyed.
So this ending is really needlessly confusing. It contradicts a lot of established lore, such as mentioning that the car accident killed her and her mother. Not true, her mother was long dead. She says that Calypso was a loving father. I dispute that, we saw what kind of father he was. And then the entire ending is just confusing because I'm not sure what is real, what isn't real, and how her wish actually played into the real world. This entire ending just leaves me scratching my head. I can't make sense of anything that happened in this ending, and it's a blatant retcon, so screw this ending.
Sweet Tooth told me he wanted to live out his greatest fantasy, to become a bug in a tiny little garden out in the country.
Okay, so I'm probably gonna get some flack for this, but despite Twisted Metal 2 being arguably the best game in the series, it has arguably the worst version of Sweet Tooth in my opinion, and that includes Small Brawl. Not 3 though, 3 is worse. His ending only makes that worse. I'm sure Sweet Tooth's ending in Twisted Metal 2 made sense to someone, but it certainly doesn't to me. Something that's never been mentioned before or since, Sweet Tooth wishes to become a bug in a countryside garden so that he can get away from all the people who call him crazy. Kind of a self-defeating wish there, eh? You see, this isn't the worst ending for Sweet Tooth, but it's definitely the worst ending in Twisted Metal 2. As I said, this has never come up and it's never addressed again. There's no rhyme or reason behind it, and then he also says this.
All he had to do was look up and dream of the day when he would crawl out of the garden and back into the world of man.
So does he want to be a bug or not? This ending manages to be silly, stupid, make no sense, not be part of any established characterization, and contradict itself in the space of like a minute. That's really impressive. You could explain the whole turning into a bug thing by him being crazy, but there are other ways to show him being crazy without all the other problems, as his other endings will show. This is a case where him being crazy and the ending being a non sequitur are basically indistinguishable.
Here you go, Grim. The portal to Halloween Land.
Another ending where I wasn't quite sure what was going on. They can't seem to decide if Billy Calypso has magical powers or not. In Mr. Grimm's Small Brawl ending, Billy leads him to the portal to Halloween Land, but it's too terrifying. Then Calypso just tips the box over. I'm really not sure what they were going for here, and I'm not entirely sure what's going on, what's real and what isn't real. So can't really say this is an A-tier ending.
Club Kid, you want to party all night long.
You're probably gonna get sick of me talking about the weak and repetitive presentation of Twisted Metal 3, but it's the gift that keeps on giving. Club Kid wants to party all night. Once again, why is this a wish you need to go to Calypso for? Of course he's going to screw you, and he does so by setting the party in Alaska, where night is 8 months long, leading him to freeze to death. Just everything about this ending is facepalm worthy.
Your wish is stupid.
My wish is to trap the bugs so I can kill them all!
Now this is just gross. Goggle Eyes is a character who only ever appeared in Twisted Metal 4, and his wish is to have all the bugs in the world trapped so that he may kill them. This is probably the worst ending in the game from a presentation standpoint because they never even leave the room they're in. He ends up having all the bugs in the world trapped within him, but it's too much and he falls over, possibly dead. That's lame. I think Goggle Eyes has potential as a character because his anxious personality is appealing, but this ending did not do him justice in any way. It's just a nothing burger of an ending to the point of actually being kind of insulting.
Okay, Calypso, you asked for a war, now you're gonna get it.
Not every ending contains a wish. Some of them are just about the participant wanting to get close to Calypso for some reason. And in these next two endings, that exact thing happens, and they both end pretty much the exact same way. In this case, Warthog, who wanted to blow Billy Calypso up for bullying him, is tricked by a cardboard cutout and ends up blowing himself up. It's kind of lame, but not something I can get passionate about. This ending is basically just what it is.
I was saving this one for you, Billy Calypso.
So the Outlaw in Small Brawl completes part 2 of this. A character who thought they had one over on Calypso attempts to hurt him and ends up blowing something up as a result. In this case, a cop car. Then Little Officer Roberts is arrested, or grounded, I'm not sure which. Either way, I place this ending as slightly better than the previous one. Despite basically the same thing happening, I think the end result of Outlaw's ending, where he's getting carried away, is slightly more humorous, which is basically the best you could hope for in Small Brawl. Also, did they really just do a 3D animated dolly zoom?
I want to be tall, like a skyscraper! I want people to look up at me with fear!
I would just like to say, Microblast sounds like a sex act. But anyway, Microblast is a leprechaun character who just wants to be big. Big enough that he'll strike fear into all he surveys. So after Melvin makes enough short jokes for it to get tiresome, and then keeps going for a few jokes just to be sure, seriously,
That you are largely, by a giant margin, the biggest champion of the Twisted Metal competitions!
Microblast becomes King Leprechaun. But then he turns into a statue. Okay, so was the rampage all hypothetical and he was always the statue, or did he just turn into a statue halfway through his rampage? Probably the former, but why? If the intention was to turn him into a statue as a twist, he could have just done that. What a completely baffling and illogical sequence of events. I will say though, turning him into a 1,000-foot statue is a very good subversion of the wish, because he is in fact a giant being staring down upon the world, striking fear into all he surveys. It just so happens that he is inanimate as well. Bada bing bada boom. A decent ending, taken down a few notches by the strange presentation, but more importantly, taken down several notches by the ceaseless short jokes. Jesus. That's a repetitive minute of not laughing I'll never get back. Talk about wearing your influences on your sleeve. Quattro is obviously supposed to be a parody of RoboCop, so I was always gonna call this ending Dead or Alive, You're Coming With Me. But then they straight up did a parody of that line. Quattro doesn't want anything to do with the competition, he's only here to arrest Sweet Tooth and his merry band of clowns. Is this ending any good though? No. This ending, possibly more than any ending in the entire series, gives me blue balls. It looks like you're about to get a cool Mexican standoff type deal, but then it ends so abruptly that I thought it was a glitch. What a bucket of balls. It's such a tease for what could have been a cool resolution, but I guess they ran out of time, or budget, or something.
I realized I was the most beautiful bride I had ever seen. When I win this contest, Calypso will find me a man who thinks so too.
Okay, so I was going down the list of all the characters in Twisted Metal Black and thought to myself, oh right, Spectre's in this game. Which just says it all, doesn't it? This time, a woman named Bloody Mary is in the driver's seat. She's a woman who's had her heart broken and has never been able to find true love. As such, she's gone crazy, so now she wishes for Calypso to find her the love of her life. The fact that I found this character so forgettable should mean that this ending should be right down the middle in the dead center of the pile. However, there's one thing that knocks this ending below mediocrity. Despite wishing for the love of her life and Calypso actively altering this guy's brain, he still says that he'll never love her. So all that effort to win the competition and get a wish from Calypso, and we end up right back to where we started. So what was even the point? Endings where the recipient of the wish don't actually get what they want can work, and in fact are very common, but this is one of those endings where nothing of substance actually happens, so there may as well not even be an ending.
You want to be famous, and on TV all the time.
You know what I find weird about Spectre? In both Twisted Metal 2 and 3, the car is driven by separate characters, but they both essentially wish for the same thing, to be famous. For as Puddle of Mud once said, I just want to be famous, be so fucking jaded. In this case, Spectre is driven by Lance Wilder, and Calypso twists the wish by having the phrasing of wanting to be on TV all the time result in him being literally trapped in a TV all the time. The way the phrasing of this wish went, this was an incredibly obvious twist. Once again, so obvious that I kinda wondered how old Lancey Boy could have missed it. It's not nearly as egregious as other Twisted Metal 3 endings because at least the wish is something someone would actually wish for, but man, it's still kinda stupid in every other way.
You think I'm afraid of a silly water pistol?
This ending is kinda cute, I guess. Crimson Fury in Small Brawl is occupied by a kid who's playing pretend secret agent, and he gets one over on Calypso by squirting a cat with a water pistol who then proceeds to maul little Billy. It is what it is, nothing special, but inoffensive, which for the standards of Small Brawl still places it pretty low in the series overall.
Your wish is for the world to be covered in flowers.
Flower Power is another vehicle that's only ever appeared once. The entire point of the character is that she's a nature-loving hippie, and her wish is that she wants the entire world to be covered in flowers, which doesn't even line up with her character profile. Unfortunately, she doesn't specify what kind of plants and gets eaten by a giant mutated Venus flytrap like this is Little Shop of Horrors. It's certainly a dumb ending, but at least the wish was sensible and the twist isn't super obvious. I'm trying to give Twisted Metal 3 as much credit as possible, but you can only give so much credit to 10-second cutscenes that all play out the same way.
I knew I shouldn't have gotten out of bed today.
My prize is getting close enough to you to do this!
Pit Viper is an interesting case, as it's the only car to never make it past the first game, and I think the concept has potential. Going under the alias of Angela Fortin, Amanda X is a freelance assassin hired by the people of LA to kill Calypso. She claims to be competing for $1 million, but really she's just wanting to get close to the big cheese himself. And this is a case where the Lost Ending version actually makes the ending worse overall. If you're unfamiliar, the very first Twisted Metal game was originally supposed to have FMV cutscenes as endings, but they were cut sometime into development because they were considered too raunchy, with the final game instead getting text-based endings. However, the lost endings were later included as a bonus on the PS2 version of Twisted Metal Head-On. Between the lost endings and the official endings that made the cut, all except for 3 characters' wishes remained the same. So I'm bundling the lost endings and the final endings together as long as the wish remains the same, and they'll be judged as a package deal. In the official ending for Pit Viper, she successfully takes out Calypso and takes the $1 million as her prize. It's a little generic, but nothing offensive. If that were it, this would probably be towards the middle of the pack, but in the lost ending, Calypso manages to find his way into her car and caps her 3 times in the head. Now, I don't want to sound too patronizing here or anything, but unless put into the correct context, the depiction of violence against women makes me uncomfortable a lot of the time, especially in cases like this where as soon as Calypso was in position, Amanda's essentially helpless to stop him. I mean, you can debate the minutia, the context, and the nuances all day, but for me it comes down to this. The lost ending, if not the official ending, makes me uncomfortable. The end. Moving on.
You wish for solitude? Among the pines?
So apparently it's a repeating theme in Twisted Metal 3 that these endings, despite being incredibly short, blatantly forget the personalities of the characters present. Case in point, Marcus Kane. Instead of being a meta deconstruction of the relationship between player and player character, he's just a paranoid schizophrenic who believes in aliens and wants to run away from civilization to live in peace. Thus his wish. However, it's phrased in such a way that he wants to live amongst the Pines, and he ends up being sent to Whispering Pines Mental Hospital, which despite the retconning of his character is actually a pretty clever and well done twist that subverts the wording of his wish. I'll give the ending some credit for at least being clever, but it's still an ending from Twisted Metal 3, so it still has the same issues holding it back.
This is it? This is gonna bring me back to life? It will.
The thing about a lot of endings in the first Twisted Metal game is that because of the minimalist presentation, I have to judge it based on other factors. The quality of writing, the lost ending version, how the wish and result of the wish is informed by the character's personality, how generally compelling the thing that's going on is, etc. Spectre is another example of an ending that's somewhat ruined by the lost ending version. The driver of Spectre, Scott Campbell, was stabbed by a crazy serial killer outside of a local circus. Gee, I wonder who the culprit is. He just wants to be alive again, and in the official ending, he gets that no strings attached and drives off home to his wife and kids. Strangely wholesome for Twisted Metal, but the lost ending is where it gets stupid, but also kinda funny. Scott wishes for the same thing, but for no reason at all, Calypso decides to shoot him dead right as he revives. That's funny on its own, and aside from that, the acting is so amazingly terrible that it only makes it even more funny.
Try again next year, driver.
Calypso, no, please don't.
Like, the actor for Scott is as wooden as an oak tree. I still consider these the same ending because the wish is the same, but man, the lost ending despite being funny is so nonsensical. Calypso has no reason to do this. It's not even a twist. He just decides for no reason to revive the guy and kill him instead of letting the wish backfire like he usually does. So yeah, the lost ending is dumb, making the total package slightly below average.
Yo, we want fat sound. Yeah, man. Fat sound, babe.
The Thumper ending in Small Brawl is stupid in concept, but makes relative sense within the context of the universe. Thumper is comprised of two people, Vinny and Bruce, and their wish is to have the baddest sound system ever comprised by man. And they get that, however their sound system is so bass boosted that it knocks them halfway across the state. The concept is a bit funny, and the idea is cute, but it still kind of falls into the I have no strong feelings one way or the other category.
I wanted to know who killed my wife, and I wanted revenge.
Despite being my favorite Twisted Metal game, the endings in Black are a mixed bag, but that's because Incognito Inc. were short on time, so compromises were made. Some characters don't get story cutscenes, and some of the endings are heavily cut down compared to others, meaning some are these full, epic cinematic cutscenes, and some are just glorified slideshows with constantly shifting art styles because some shots are reused from other cutscenes, and some look like repurposed concept art. Worst of all being Axel. He wants revenge on the man who killed his wife, and the culprit ends up being Sweet Tooth. It could have been a great scene, but the presentation is so basic that it kinda ruins whatever dramatic tension the scene could have had. Half the scene is just Axel's loading screen portrait with his sumptuous voice playing over it.
He was always around the neighborhood. I had not been more careful.
And aside from that, the wish just isn't very interesting. He wants to kill the guy who killed his wife. It's very standard, and nothing else really happens to spice up this ending, except for the culprit being Needles Kane himself, and Axel realizing that killing Sweet Tooth would never bring his wife back, which itself is also a very standard plot point in fiction. Plus, this is one of, no joke, 6 endings in Black that in some way involve taking revenge, so it's not even unique. Yeah, of all the endings in Black, this one suffers the most due to the development issues, but hey, we got some good coming.
I wish to be reborn, so I may complete my life's work.
So this ending plays off the Mr. Slam ending from Twisted Metal 2. Simon Whittlebone wanted to build the greatest architectural achievement of all time, but he fell from the tower when it was nearing completion. Now his spirit can't rest until the tower is done, but he misspeaks and says he wishes to be reborn so he can finish the tower. And as soon as he said reborn, I knew exactly what was going to happen. I will compliment this ending for the fact that it's basically the same ending as Augur from Twisted Metal 3, but actually makes sense. Even still, I classify this under the umbrella of what were you expecting to happen? It makes sense from a personality perspective, and the twist was perfectly serviceable, but this ending is nothing special.
Your wish is to have a barbecue with all your friends.
Yeah, this is yet another wish where I question why it needed to be a wish. Firestarter, aka Damian Coles, wants to have a giant barbecue with all his friends. And the end result is him being cooked alive on a spit. The only reason I'm putting this higher than a lot of the really stupid wishes is because this is essentially the premise of a really funny but slightly disturbing animation by the Minute Hour called That's a Nice Grill. So it's at least a failed attempt at comedy that reminds me of a much better example of comedy. Otherwise, why is this something you need to wish for?
Did Calypso really have the power to give me a second chance?
I've been trying to come up with a clever name for all these endings, but did I intend for the number 69 on the list to be called Failure to Discharge? No, it just kind of worked out that way and I'm happy it did. Oh man, this one's sad, but kind of unintentionally funny. So here's what's up. The driver of Outlaw in Twisted Metal Black, Agent Stone, no seriously, that's his name, foiled a terrorist attack, but a family died in the crossfire. Crushed under guilt and PTSD, his ending involves being sent back to that night to save the family in question. He manages to save the family, but in the process gets himself killed. This is one of the weaker endings in the game because despite the harrowing and gripping subject matter, it's never adequately explained or even implied exactly what changed this time that he could shoot the guy only to have himself die in the process. It's just egregiously contrived for want of having a twist ending. It's rumored that the terrorist he shoots is Calypso himself, which would make sense, because who else has the power to kill a police officer? From 200 yards away. With bullets. But that's only a rumor, and within the grander context of the game, it just seems like a terrorist landed a perfect headshot from a mile away. With a pistol. So this ending just came across like they couldn't find a way to give Stone an unhappy ending while also succeeding. So the end result is hectically contrived, but at least the presentation is good, which kicks it up a few notches.
Please, Calypso, he begged. Give me the body of a 20-year-old.
So this is one of the few cases, if not the only case, where I'd say the Twisted Metal 3 ending is actually better than the ending that preceded it. Only marginally, though. The driver of Warthog, Captain Rogers, is an old decrepit war veteran who wants his youth back, so he wishes for the body of a 20-year-old. Too bad he forgot to wish for the head to match. That's it. That's the twist. It's another one of those endings where I have no strong feelings one way or the other. It's just kinda there. The wish is kinda generic, the twist is predictable based on the phrasing of the wish, and Captain Rogers is just not a very interesting character.
Last time you wished for the body of a 20-year-old. This time you want the head to match?
This ending is kinda predictable, but it's also fairly inoffensive and a bit funny as well. Warthog, who previously wished for the body of a 20-year-old, now wants to wish for the head to match, and ends up a head in a jar. Clever. The way this wish was worded makes it a bit obvious, but it's also not so obvious as to be insulting like the whole inner child thing, so all things being equal, this ain't a bad ending. But, you know, once again, Twisted Metal 3 presentation. Isn't it odd how they omitted the Mr. in Mr. Slam in Small Brawl? Technically he's not a Mr., but then again they didn't omit the Mr. in Mr. Grimm. Whatever. Looking at it, I think Small Brawl has the highest ratio of Calypso meeting his just desserts in the entire series. In this case, not Mr. Slam, but just Slam gets one over on Billy Calypso by catching him in a construction vehicle and burying him up to his neck. And if that wasn't enough, Calypso then gets a porta potty put on top of him. That's gross, but the implication is kinda funny in an extremely juvenile way. It's insubstantial but harmless, and got a chuckle out of me, so it's basically an okay ending. Surprisingly, they did a good job at translating the universal personality of Twister into Small Brawl. She wants to go fast, so Calypso lets her go fast by attaching the ride she's on to a rocket. I don't know how he did that, but who cares? It's an appropriate ending given Twister's personality, and an amusing one at that.
Tell me it's here, and tell me no one's heard it. I told the government I'd get it back to them.
So basically, the next two endings from Twisted Metal 1 come as a pair because they concern the exact same MacGuffin, a flight recorder from a downed aircraft. The flight recording shows that the aircraft was shot down by a UFO, proving the existence of aliens. Commander Mason, the driver of Warthog, is tasked by the government to retrieve the flight recorder because the truth can't get out to the people of the world. He shows up, gets the flight recorder, and leaves. That's pretty much it. As for the ending it's paired with...
God, you've got it. You've actually got the box.
Now, this ending concerns the exact same flight recorder. Only this time, the driver of Crimson Fury, Agent Stone... Hold up, there's 2 separate characters in this series named Agent Stone? The hell? Technically 3 if you count Crimson Fury from Small Brawl as a separate character, which personally I don't. He's just a different version of this character. He's a British secret agent who wants to retrieve the flight recording in order to prove the existence of aliens. Agent Stone would eventually go on to become a latte aficionado and total simp for Dr. Robotnik. I place this ending as slightly better than the previous one, but really you can arrange these 2 endings however you wish. The only notable thing about the Crimson Fury ending compared to Warthog is that the lost ending for Crimson Fury is shown entirely from a POV perspective, which tells me one thing. These FMV endings were on such a tight budget, they couldn't even afford to rent a Lamborghini for even a one-day shoot. Both these endings are just kinda there. The wish is simple and they get exactly what they want. There's a larger intrigue here that's never really expanded upon, so it feels like a tease for something that never really ended up amounting to anything. Perfectly serviceable, but nothing to write home about.
We the Joneses wish for the top-of-the-line Roadluster 3000 trailer.
Granted!
With the optional 2 full tanks of propane, sir!
Granted!
This, believe it or not, was the hardest ending on the list to place, because on one hand, it succeeds at what it sets out to do, it has a setup, a payoff, it's satisfying, and it's a bit funny. But it's also quite cringeworthy, stupid, and conceptually just isn't as interesting as a lot of other endings on this list. Even endings that I would consider mediocre. The Joneses in Twisted Metal 4 are a horribly annoying middle American family, and they wish for a new RV with all the bells and whistles. And they also wish for Sweet Tooth as their chauffeur. And of course, you don't have Sweet Tooth on without having a death wish. The Joneses get on his nerves to such an extent that he ends up driving them off a cliff. Deservedly so. I mean, what were they expecting?
Your wish is stupid.
I sympathize. I fantasize about driving into head-on traffic after a hard day at work. I can't imagine what Sweet Tooth is going through. It's simple but effective. Establish characters as annoying and punish them for being annoying. Sunrise, sunset. And it's nice that they were acknowledged as being annoying rather than the developers being completely unaware like writers can sometimes be. But I still feel like I like this ending more than I should, but at the same time I dislike it more than I should. It's a very conflicting ending, so I feel like it's placed squarely right down the middle.
Technically, such exuberance is common following radiation.
Yet another ending that I would consider mostly inoffensive. In the opening cutscene to Small Brawl, we saw Billy Calypso steal the pet frog of the driver of Shadow, Mortimer. Shadow, aka Mortimer, then gets one over on Calypso when the frog in question suddenly mutates, having previously been exposed to radiation. And then it eats Calypso. Womp friggin' womp. It's a neat little ending, nothing special, but it's perfectly serviceable.
Please, Calypso, help me to build my tower. Help me to build my dream.
Simon Whittlebone's wish is to build the tallest man-made structure ever. And he almost succeeds, but he falls off the top and embeds himself in the concrete. I like that this ending is informed by the personality of the person making the wish, but otherwise, the most I can say about this ending is that it happened. Thumper's ending in the very first game is noble and a bit sweet, but about as down the middle as you can possibly get. Our boy Bruce wants the crime in the South Central District of LA to finally be put to an end, so that his home can be a safe place to live. That's what he wishes for, Calypso delivers, no twist, nothing. It's a perfectly fine wish with a perfectly fine outcome, but nothing to write home about. It doesn't even have a lost ending to make fun of, so it's about as down the middle of the road as you could possibly get. This one's a bit depressing. Old man Charlie Kane goes through the Twisted Metal tournament all to find out exactly what happened to his son 20 years ago, only to find out that his son was one of the people competing in the tournament, and the shocking twist that in trying to find his son, he didn't even realize that he actually killed his son. Roll the clip.
So, which one of you wants to try and describe the word filicide to
Charlie. Driving away in anguish, he wonders if he should enter the tournament next year so that he can wish away the pain. And I'm sure Calypso would tell him, I offer you forgiveness, but no one should be able to forget the things you've done. This ending is kind of a bummer, but it's not really anything to write home about. It's just kind of there. The wish is meh, and the twist is predictable, but there's nothing bad about it. A perfectly middle-of-the-road ending.
For my prize, you put me on the world's biggest runway. You make me the center of attention, and then, baby, you watch me shine.
Some deem it disappointing that the 2012 game only has 3 playable characters in the story. I don't mind so much because it means you can tell a much more cohesive story in the lead up to the ending, as well as have a more detailed ending. The weakest of these 3 endings, though, is Dollface. It's weird how at the beginning of the series, Calypso was more keen to give people what they wanted, no strings attached. But by the 2012 game, he was going out of his way to be a dick. Case in point, this. Dollface threw away the chance to fix the glaring scar on her face because she wanted fame. She wanted to be the lead star on the biggest runway in the world. And whoops, Calypso used the term runway literally. And instead of, getting off the runway, she just runs down the runway, sprains her ankle, gets ran over by a plane, and that's all she wrote. It's easily the weakest ending in the game. It's pretty well top-notch presentation-wise, the twist with the wordplay is actually insanely clever, and as far as personality, the wish makes sense, but it's knocked down a bit by the suspension of disbelief breaking entirely when she ends up being done in. You couldn't have just, moved 20 feet to the left or something? Gotten off the runway? Not gotten run over? Done anything other than what you did? So contrived. As a result, it's not a bad ending, but it could have been better handled.
Now you want to go back in time. Set things straight.
Roadkill in the very first Twisted Metal game is a character archetype that would be more closely associated with the likes of Warthog, a military veteran who led his squad into a trap and wants a second chance to make things right. It's a fairly standard wish with a fairly standard twist outcome. He's sent back in time straight into a South American war zone and is immediately killed before he even has a chance to save his platoon. And back in the present, his car is stolen by a couple of teenagers. In the Lost ending, he has the chance to save his men before getting shot, but either way, it's the same wish with the same outcome. Although it's elevated by the Lost ending's cheesy acting and laughably cheap set design, but I still consider them the same ending, and as an ending, it's not bad. Not good. Just kinda standard.
For pizza!
Pizza? Pizza.
Okay, so I'll give Axel's ending in Head On this. It's not quite as stupid as his ending in Twisted Metal 3. For all that's worth. Essentially, a scientist reconstructs his arms after he ripped them off in Twisted Metal 2, more on that later. But as payment, Axel promises to re-enter the tournament and give the scientist his wish. However, Axel has second thoughts and decides to take the wish for himself, attempting to wish for world peace. But oops, the scientist gave Axel a shock collar and shocked him like a bad dog, meaning he stutters.
Let me out of this thing!
Fucking whoops.
This is another ending that kind of feels like a giant middle finger. Nothing's accomplished, the wish is wasted, and after fighting through several levels, nothing of consequence actually ends up happening. Despite the decent presentation and context that sets this up, the end result is mixed at best. But the fact that the wish being wasted makes contextual sense and is relevant to the personalities involved, I can't place this ending super low. I place it somewhere in the okay tier.
No, Calypso. I wish to return to my slumber, please.
This one is sweet. Basically, Shadow, aka Mortimer in this case, is a living corpse who was revived when a couple of punk kids dug up his grave. And all he wants is to go back to sleep. And you know what? He gets exactly that. No twist, no turns, nothing. Calypso didn't even think to get revenge for all those times Mortimer got one over on him. It's a perfectly fine ending where everyone gets exactly what they want. I think what elevates this one above a lot of the other endings, and something that's sort of universal in Head On, is the acting. Because the voice acting in Head On is superb and really sells the personalities involved. But yeah, this ending falls squarely in the middle.
When I win this game, Calypso promises he'll make everything all better.
Yellow Jacket's ending from Twisted Metal Black is okay. The whole idea of the nameless Kane child is that he can't move on from his father, Charlie's death. So he wires his dad up with machinery so that he can control his dad with a remote. The nameless kid wants to wish his dad back to life, but instead Calypso smashes the remote, refusing to give the kid what he wants and forces the kid to leave his father behind. However, Calypso takes the kid in as his protege to take over the contest when Calypso dies. Needles would have been the perfect candidate, but now that he's dead, the last of the Kane bloodline will have to do. It's one of those endings where I don't really have any strong feelings one way or the other. There's nothing about it that blows my mind. This was when the budget was starting to run out, so it's cut down a bit, but at least it still has an intro cutscene. This is the perfect example of an ending that gets the job done, but isn't spectacular. Probably would have been better if Black had gotten a proper sequel, but I'm afraid that wasn't the case.
Player in a bucket, heck, trip down hoop ride, all chromey, homie, with my name on my props. Oh yeah, it's gonna be quick. What?
Okay, so I'm not really one for the urban dialect, especially not urban dialect from the early 2000s. I barely knew English at that time. But Pizza Boy from Twisted Metal 4 speaks so indecipherably, I don't even know what he's wishing for. I had to look it up, but as it turns out, he just wanted the fastest and most tricked out car in the universe. Well, that worked out, I guess. With that established, this wish is kinda generic, and the end result is a bit predictable. But at least the cutscene is nice. I was considering deducting points for the indecipherable language use, but actually I think it adds a little bit of extra personality to proceedings. So it's quite the opposite, making this ending somewhat above average.
It all comes back to cash, bro. The greenbacks, a dead president, Somalis, clams, haha, yeah!
You know, it surprises me just how many people win Twisted Metal and don't even think about wishing for money. If I recall correctly, the only person before this to do so was Pit Viper, and she only did so as a means to get close to Calypso. So here we are, 7 games in, and finally someone, Spectre, wishes for money, and they get buried alive by it. I quite like this ending. It's the quintessential example of the monkey's paw style wish that Calypso works with. You want money? Well, here's all the money in the world. Try not to suffocate, Scrooge McDuck.
See my car here? Well, I want more. More lift, more bounce, more thump.
So, I don't know why, but they decided to switch the driver of Thumper after like 6 installments. Now it's some white trash chick who was really playing with fire when she decided to disrespect Calypso the way she did.
Yo, excuse me? Who do you think you're talking to? You better show some respect or you're gonna be sorry.
She wants the biggest, baddest, thumpinest ride to ever exist. And she gets it. Damn near destroying an entire city in the process before getting crushed by a building. Well, can't say she didn't deserve it. Aside from her disrespect, this was also a vague enough wish that Calypso could have twisted it in any number of ways. So you didn't quite know where it was going, but it made total sense. I think this ending is somewhat generic, once again elevated by the personalities involved. Although almost uniquely among Twisted Metal endings, I actually side with Calypso in this case because Angel was acting like such a bee that I completely understood his rationale. So it's nice to see a deserving person get some comeuppance. Boy, I'm kind of psychotic at times, aren't I?
You won the game, and now you want me to find your old man.
This is a cute little ending. Spectre in Small Brawl is a kid in a Charlie Brown ghost costume who just wants to find his dad, and the only thing Billy Calypso could find is a locket which contains a picture of his dad and a key to his secret garage. It's worth noting that the picture is of Ken Masters from Twisted Metal 2, implying that Mr. Masters is the father of this game's Spectre. Meaning this game technically has a tangential relationship to Twisted Metal 2. I consider it more of an Easter egg, honestly, and an Easter egg that doesn't necessarily prove that there's a definitive connection, especially when you take into account all the many ways the universe of Small Brawl is different to the universe of Twisted Metal 2. I think it's just a wink and a nod from the developers, as Incognito Inc. was comprised of the same people who made the first 2 games. But it's a cute little wink and a nod, and one that elevates this ending into being one of the best in the game. For whatever that's worth.
You want to spend the rest of eternity in hell?
This one's fun. In Twisted Metal 3, Minion simply wants to go back to hell, and Calypso sends him to hell. Michigan. That's a neat little twist. Nothing more to it than that. Maybe while he's there, he can go to Damnation University. No, seriously, that's actually a thing in the real-life hell Michigan.
Send me back to save my father, Calypso.
Mr. Grimm in the 2012 interpretation isn't a reaper of souls nor a carnivore, but rather a man who went off the deep end when he witnessed his father, a professional motorcycle stuntman, die after a horrible stunt gone wrong. All he wants to do is go back in time to stop his father from ever making the jump, and so he does. But he didn't account for the fact that a face-painted psycho appearing in the backseat of his father's truck might cause more issues than it solves. He never got the terms and conditions of his time travel explained to him, nor did he specify an exact time or place to go back to, so the twist was that his wish would become the reason his own dad died. And Mr. Grimm also didn't account for the fact that his younger self might shoot him. The ending is presented well, and I like the twist of Mr. Grimm's own younger self being the one to kill him, but it's yet another case of time travel gone wrong, and you can see where it was going from a mile away. Plus, the wish is overall kind of a basic one, so I rate this one above average overall, veering into pretty good, partially due to the great presentation.
I want a tool that will help me eradicate villains of this world!
Okay, so you know those series of memes about Brazil, like, come to Brazil, or Brazil doesn't exist, and all that? Those exist because, for whatever reason, Brazilians on the internet like everybody to know where they're from and that everybody should go there. Well, Colonel Hall took those jokes a little bit too literally. In Head On, Warthog's ending involves Colonel Hall wishing for a weapon of ultimate destruction to kill all drug lords because drugs are corrupting the youth of the nation. A very noble wish, although he probably should have also wished for a bulletproof vest because the first chance he gets to fight against some drug lords, he gets shot to death. Womp womp. This is another one of those endings that's just kind of there. The wish backfires in a very predictable way, but it's also not a bad or stupid wish. And the acting also makes this ending better than it would have otherwise. You really believe that Colonel Hall is a genuine army official the way the voice actor plays him.
No, I'm talking about all the evildoers out there! Drug lords who go around forcing their bile and swill on our nation's youth!
Good shit.
I want you to make it, so I can track the last big game worth hunting!
Seriously, how many times has Hammerhead switched drivers? I think as far as biggest number of different drivers, it's between Hammerhead and Spectre. But I could be wrong. In this case, Hammerhead is driven by a guy who goes by Catfish, and all he wants is the ability to hunt the deadliest game. People. Unfortunately, it never occurred to him that if you and your prey are on an equal playing field, the hunter can easily turn into the hunted. And that's exactly what happens. It's real satisfying to see a murderous redneck son of a bitch be put into his place. And having his head hung on a wall somewhere is a nice touch. The personalities really sell this ending. This is the exact thing that I'd imagine someone like Catfish would wish for. And the end result is a truly fitting and gratifying ending.
Get me on some old desire. We're gonna be on dang old on dutting on moves on man gonna say bow bow.
Huh, 3 in a row for Head On. Go Head On. Okay, so to those of you who understand what I'm saying here, ATV is to Twisted Metal what Cobra was to Mortal Kombat. A character who had such little impact and is of such little lasting importance that it's not only forgivable that you forget about him, it's kind of a given. Which is a shame because I think ATV's character has some potential. The brainless redneck who speaks like Boomhauer from King of the Hill. His wish is to be the most desirable man on Earth. Unfortunately, this backfires in a very predictable way. Aside from not specifying desirable to women only, he gets bombarded with attention to the point that he's smothered. That's a classic monkey's paw wish. And much like Spectre's wish for money in the same game, I'm surprised it took 7 games to come up. It's an alright ending, and the presentation sells it quite well, with him gradually being swarmed by more and more people. Not bad by any means, especially for a character as forgettable as this. I'm placing it this high because I find the character-driven nature of this cutscene to be really gripping.
You've snatched every soul on the planet but mine. Now you want my soul?
So Mr. Grimm's ending in Twisted Metal 3 still suffers from the presentation issues of the rest of the game, but it also breaks away from the standard formula. Plus, the inevitable twist is fun and pretty clever. This ending plays off the ending from the second game where Mr. Grimm wishes for more souls to eat. We'll get back to that later. He's consumed every human soul, so now he wants Calypso's soul. So Calypso gives him his soul. Of his shoe. That's actually a clever subversion, and utilizes the double meaning of the word soul to clever effect. This is one of the rare endings in Twisted Metal 3 that I can say I genuinely like.
No! Look! Where are you going? No!
What are you doing with black?
What is it with these games and the word black? Multiple characters, playable and unplayable, as well as an entire game, have that title. So, you guys ready for something that's gonna get retconned? In the very first game, it's established that Calypso gets his power from a mysterious creature named Black. Some sort of demon from hell. Darkseid, meanwhile, is another demon from hell sent to retrieve it. Now, I was gonna come on here and say that we don't really know who Mr. Ash is. That is until I did some more digging and found that David Jaffe himself kinda went over my head here and revealed that Mr. Ash is indeed Satan himself. All of this was of course later retconned when Calypso was established to have gotten his power directly from Satan, but that's a different story. Anyway, in Darkseid's ending, Mr. Ash retrieves Black and goes on his merry way, and the Lost ending is of course filled with hilariously hammy acting and cheesy effects. The ending on its own is kind of generic, but that Lost ending kicks it up several notches.
I want to rule the world, he told me. I want to be in charge of it all. I want to be king of the earth.
You know, coming up with a clever title for each of these entries can be a bit tough, but calling this one King Nothing was almost too easy. Which, if you're not familiar, is a Metallica song that has to do with a king who loses everything and ends up being a king in name only. In Twisted Metal 2, Thumper, aka Bruce, is a gang member who wants to rule more turf. In fact, he wants to rule all of the turf. He wants to be king of the world. So Calypso happily obliges, but the world was destroyed, so he ends up ruling over a pile of rubble and dead bodies. I'm placing this one a bit lower on the list than it probably should be because it's a blatant retcon. The world wasn't destroyed in any other ending, at least not before the Wish, nor is it destroyed in any of the future entries in the series. Calypso specifies that the world was destroyed by the Twisted Metal tournament.
But the world had been reduced to rubble during the Twisted Metal contest.
So this ending seems oddly contrived compared to the other endings where there seems to be a certain universality to the state of the world. Still not an unreasonable wish, and definitely a wish that somebody in his position would make, as well as a twist that would be a great twist without the retcon. But the retcon does stifle the overall quality.
And as my prize, I demand that you let me see my brother!
In the first game, Sergeant Carl Roberts was sent to space. In the second game, his sister Captain Jamie Roberts wanted to rescue him. It's a basic follow-up. Still, it's clever that she worded her wish in such a way that she would end up being sent to space along with her brother, but anticipated exactly that happening and retrofitted her car with space travel components to get back, essentially using Calypso's own tricks against him, while pretending that wasn't what she was doing. Although Carl was apparently lost in space for a year and was still alive. So an egregious amount of suspension of disbelief must be exercised. Still a pretty decent ending with a neat double twist.
I am the winner, and you are my prize. I want your soul.
Man, Mr. Grimm has changed a lot over the course of the series, but at first it was all about the soul. As is probably obvious based on the name, Mr. Grimm is in fact the Grim Reaper. And in the first game, his story is that Calypso is the one soul he's been unable to reap, but not today. Mr. Grimm takes Calypso's soul and drives off into the night. And once again, the Lost ending is hilarious. Between the obvious plastic prop skeleton and Calypso being poorly tied to the back of Mr. Grimm's motorcycle as they're driving off, it's a funny sight to behold. It's an alright ending, it gets its point across, but it's very straightforward. It would have placed a lot lower had it not been for the hilarity of the Lost ending.
I'd won Calypso's stupid game. He said it was time to claim my prize. It was time for Kelly to get her revenge.
Like most drivers in Twisted Metal Black, the recurring vehicles are driven by new characters. In this case, Shadow is driven by a woman named Raven. And I know the joke everyone's gonna make, so don't bother. She's a goth chick, and as such found herself being an outcast. So when her best friend Kelly was drowned by two guys from school, she swore revenge. And how does she get revenge? Well, Calypso gives her a couple of voodoo dolls, and what do you know, next time you see her friend's murderers, they both have their eyes poked out. Chef's kiss. As far as Twisted Metal Black is concerned, this ending has all the creepiness and darkness that comes with the game, and the resolution ties somewhat into her characterization because Raven was implied to be a witch. So there's a bit of personality to this ending. It's not mind-blowing, and the fact that she wants revenge is a bit generic given that, as stated, this is one of 6 revenge endings in the game, but still, not bad at all for what it is. In fact, I would say it's pretty good.
Forget it, Calypso. The name is Special Agent Shepard of the FBI. You're under arrest.
So this is a rare trait amongst these endings. It's a situation where I expected there to be a twist, but the twist was that there is no twist. Crimson Fury in Head On is driven by Special Agent Shepard of the FBI, who is specifically there to arrest Calypso. Calypso even makes the point that every year someone tries to arrest him, and it's true. I don't think there's a single game that's gone by where there wasn't at least an attempt to arrest him, kill him, or end the tournament. Either way, Calypso tries to butter Agent Shepard up, but he's not having any of it. You're waiting for the twist, but in the end... FBI, open up! And they successfully arrest Calypso despite his powers probably being strong enough to get himself out of there. But he goes with it, and that's that. Honestly, it was a surprising ending just for how straightforward it was, and that's why I place it here. It's not a mind-blowing ending, but it's a pleasant surprise.
Couldn't Eddie want a better one?
But...
So Cousin Eddie is a boss in Twisted Metal Head On who you can unlock as a playable character, and I like the way his ending recontextualizes the idea of boss characters in Twisted Metal. Basically, Calypso lashes out at him for being an uninvited guest in his tournament, and Eddie himself thought it was just a standard demolition derby. But either way, he's not a legitimate participant, so he doesn't get his prize until he nearly chokes out Calypso. And all he wants is a better ride. The wish isn't what sells this ending to me, it's simply the intriguing idea that Eddie wasn't supposed to be in the contest. And it plays with that relationship between the player and Calypso in a way that isn't often explored. The idea that this is a genuine contest with actual rules and necessary steps you need to take before you compete. So conceptually, this one is really interesting.
I want to go faster than anyone ever has. As my prize, give me the ability to drive at the speed of light.
Fun fact, when I typed out "got to go fast" in Google Docs, it autocorrected to "gotta." Google knows what's up. This ending is a lot of things. Trippy, psychedelic, stupid, but definitely funny. The driver of Twister, Amanda Watts, wanted to be able to drive at the speed of light. And as a result, she starts traveling through time until she ends up running out of fuel in the dinosaur age and gets stepped on by a T-Rex that makes this noise. I don't know much about dinosaurs, but I doubt they sound like elephants. There's a lot going on in this ending. It's definitely one of the more elaborate in the game. The effort on display is impressive, and the end result is a bit wacky, but definitely holds your interest. The visuals are funny and have sort of a psychedelic rock aesthetic, and the entire wish and cutscene that follows is very personality driven. This is a pretty damn good ending. Not on the upper end of good, but getting there.
And all you can think of is a little ice cream?
Man, this ending is sinister as fuck. Despite being from Small Brawl, Sweet Tooth's ending is actually pretty sick. He makes it seem like he just wants a little ice cream, but then jacks the ice cream truck and ties Calypso to the front while on a joyride being chased by the police. It's deceptively dark, it's totally in character, and the presentation of Little Sweet Tooth is done really well. It's a smooth transition from the big maniac to the little maniac. I got nothing else. I just think this ending is pretty cool. Who would have thought that Small Brawl would result in one of Sweet Tooth's better endings?
Please, Calypso, you gotta make me famous. Make it so the entire world knows my face.
This one's funny, and it's even more funny to me because to stretch out one's face is an in-joke between me and my friends. Okay, so Spectre is not driven by a ghost in Twisted Metal 2, but rather Ken Masters. Yes, that is his name. He's an actor who's been looking for his big break for a whole 6 weeks. He wants the whole world to know his face, so Calypso proceeds to pull a Zamasu and makes his face the entire sky. That is beyond hysterical. I have no other reason for placing this ending as high as it is, other than because of how funny it is. I just find this ending hysterical, even beyond the inside joke quality. I mean, his face is stretched out. With lips.
The captain wishes to meet Sweet Tooth in a sword fight to the death, and the prize to the victor, the soul of the first one dead.
So I'm not sure if Captain Grimm is supposed to be a take on Mr. Grimm, or if he's an original character altogether. Either way, Captain Grimm is a skeleton pirate who wishes to have a sword duel with Sweet Tooth. Although instead of saying the winner gets the loser's soul, his terms are, the winner gets the soul of the first one dead, which kind of lampshades the twist. But it is a neat twist. Instead of going for Captain Grimm, who's seemingly already dead, so that's a bit unfair, Sweet Tooth goes straight for his parrot. As per the agreement, the parrot was the first one dead. Damn it, my bird fell into a pile of raspberry jam. Even lampshaded, this is a twist that genuinely caught me off guard. I didn't even think of the word usage until the parrot was already dead. It's very clever, so I'm impressed. My only complaint is that I wish the sword fight would have been, an actual sword fight. I wish they could have exchanged blows a few times before doing the double flying slash with all the cool effects. Still, it's definitely an ending worthy of its place this high up on the list. This is yet another ending from the first game that's elevated beyond its minimalist presentation by how much personality is on display. This is one of the foremost examples of wishes that are informed by the character's personality. Hammerhead is driven by Mike and Dave. They're a couple of simple-minded but chill dudes, and all they want are new, quote, treads. Which is a bit of slang that even Calypso doesn't understand. Essentially, they want new tires for their monster truck. They get them, and they race off excited to enter the Twisted Metal tournament again next year, not knowing what else they could possibly wish for, though. It's not deep or thought-provoking, but it's neat, it's funny, it's character-driven, and it's always nice to see Calypso get completely exasperated at granting a wish for something so menial. But, hey, at least he gave it to them no strings attached, am I right?
It is I who have a gift for you.
A gift? For me?
Is there any character in the entire series who has a better KD ratio against Calypso than Mortimer, the usual driver of Shadow? In this case, Mortimer releases the souls of all the people killed by the Twisted Metal tournaments to fly Calypso away, ostensibly ending his life, but we'll see about that. It wouldn't be anything special if not for the ending shot, which is a cute little homage to the Twilight Zone movie, the gremlin on the wings specifically. So it has some neat and iconic imagery, otherwise it's a pretty sick ending conceptually, but nondescript at the same time.
I really wanted just another chance to drive. My God, you killed everyone.
This one is oddly sad. Yellow Jacket's lost ending is one of the 3 endings that are completely different from the official ending. In this case, Charlie Kane doesn't really want anything. He's an old washed-up taxi driver who just wanted another chance to drive. This story is furthered somewhat by the manual confirming that he was a former race car driver. However, he knows he's not long for this world, so just wanted one last shot to feel his former glory. But Calypso offers him more than just a second chance. Calypso offers Charlie the chance at immortality, to serve as Calypso's HR rep, traveling the world forever to find competitors for the tournament. Of course, the terms and conditions aren't laid out until after Charlie already takes the immortality serum, but whoop-de-doo, he didn't seem too hung up about it.
And you'll drive forever. What do you say, Mr. Kane?
Sounds good to me, baby.
This is an average ending elevated by the subject matter and presentation. It's a bit sad seeing old man Charlie so desperate to relive his glory days that he's willing to enter a tournament of death against his own son. A fact they acknowledge. Which makes it a bittersweet moment when he finally ends up taking the serum. He gets what he wants, but at the expense of his free will.
There's a man out there took my wife and turned me into a freak. When I win this contest, he's gonna pay for what he done.
I think this is a case where somebody on the dev team was trying to work something out of their system. Billy Ray, driver of Junkyard Dog in Twisted Metal Black, is a guy who was nearly poisoned to death by a crop duster. But it was no mistake. The pilot conspired with Billy Ray's wife, whom she was having an affair with, to kill Billy and take the life insurance money. Billy Ray survived, but was left horribly scarred and mutated. In his rage, he then proceeded to brutally murder his wife, but the pilot got away. So all our guy wanted was to get his hands on the pilot who made him this way. So it's yet another revenge plot, but this one is slightly elevated by the method in which Junkyard Dog here takes revenge. Going full Raiders of the Lost Ark and grinding him into a fine paste with plane propellers. That is metal. It's satisfying to see someone incredibly deserving get their comeuppance, and the ridiculously over-the-top manner only makes it all the sweeter. And the ending bit where he decides to leave the country life in favor of a life in the city adds a splash of intriguing vagueness to proceedings that I quite like.
I wish for my sister to be returned to me this instant, and she better be alive.
So this is a scene that's surprisingly funny. Miranda Watts is the sister to Amanda Watts, the driver of Twister from Twisted Metal 2. She just wants her sister back, so in one of the most unintentionally funny moments in the entire series, Calypso just summons Mr. Grimm to take a single soul from him. I'm reminded of this one clip from The Simpsons.
And as for you, I don't know you, but I'm sure you're a jerk. Hey, I've only been here a few minutes. What's going on?
Of course, though, when Amanda is returned to Miranda, Jesus Christ, what were their parents thinking? She's a zombified husk. You know, just put some aloe on that, you'll be good in no time. Once again, the twist is slightly predictable, but it's the surrounding presentation that makes this ending as good as it is. I love the grotesque visuals in particular. It really sells the consequences of her wish that Amanda looks straight out of Tales from the Crypt. Although I will admit, there is a single line here that I completely missed before, which puts a slight hole in my timeline video.
I know she competed in Twisted Metal a few years back, and no one has heard from her since.
A few years ago, as in more than one. So despite a lot of evidence pointing to Head On taking place in 2007, 1 year after Twisted Metal 2, this scene contradicts that, but that would also imply that there are a couple of years worth of Twisted Metal tournaments that we aren't privy to. But then having a couple of years gap might also explain how Calypso has aged so much between the second game and this one. You know what, this is just too confusing to think about, moving on.
I just came here to give you this, sweetie.
This fine is in the millions! This can't—
Titties! Shitty polygonal titties.
That has to be one of the most uncanny attempts at titillation I've ever seen. Anyway, this is another one of those endings that attempt to be funny and actually succeeds. So Sweet Tooth and his merry band of clowns have racked up millions of dollars worth of traffic tickets. But in exchange for avoiding the tickets, Sweet Tooth just has to do a little bit of community service. What kind of community service? Yeah, okay. That got a laugh out of me. Nothing more to it than that. Just a joke ending that worked.
I'm not the one who kidnapped your girlfriend, but as promised, she is here.
So Thumper is another one of the characters who, in the first Twisted Metal game, had a completely different ending in the final game compared to the Lost ending. I thought the official ending was basically right down the middle, neither good nor bad. The Lost ending, on the other hand, is fantastic. Apparently Bruce, in this version, was some sort of contract killer whose girlfriend was kidnapped because Bruce stopped taking contracts. Well, Bruce comes in with a shotgun to Calypso's face, but gets his girlfriend back, as well as a face-to-face with the guy who kidnapped her. But Bruce spares him because he's just a good guy. Then this happens.
That was anticlimactic.
Oh my god.
That is hysterical. This Lost ending has all the qualities I love about the Lost endings: hammy acting, bad effects, cheap-looking set pieces, Calypso's actor being hilarious, all the fun of the fair. But what really ties this ending together is the kidnapper's acting.
You don't have to do this, man. You don't have to do this. I'm sorry about the girl, man. You don't have to do this.
I speak no hyperbole when I say I am literally a better actor than him. But still, this ending is ridiculous and hilarious, and I love it.
I don't want to be the Reaper of Souls anymore.
The interpretation of Mr. Grimm has been all over the place as far as his motivation is concerned. He's wanted Calypso's soul, all the souls, revenge, and now in the case of Head On, resignation. He's sick of being a soul junkie and wishes to have the burden of being the Reaper of Souls be given to someone else. So Mr. Grimm's duties are given to the first person Calypso sees, some random little girl, which I'm almost certain is the premise of some anime somewhere. Because every concept in fiction has an anime adaptation where the concept is put through the filter of happening to a little girl. Mr. Grimm is then given mortality. Unfortunately, mortality bites, and he immediately biffs it. Thanks for playing, buddy. The twist is slightly predictable, but the wish makes sense, the presentation is solid, and the end result is tragic and compelling, and also a bit darkly comedic. I give this ending a solid B-.
I've seen this monster before, in my own reflection.
This is one of those endings that's a lot better in concept than it is in execution, but it's still a really sick concept. The entire character of Darktooth in Head On is based around the idea of Needles and Marcus Kane working as one. The two halves split and meet face to face for the first time, and it basically goes like this. Who are you? I'm you, but better. Hey look, it's Towertooth, let's drive it. The end. If it led to something, if it had more purpose, if anything actually happened, this would have been a top tier ending. But it didn't, so it isn't. That said, the moment conceptually is cool enough on its own to make it one of the better endings on premise alone. I feel like this ending should go lower, but I just can't in good conscience place it any lower than this.
We demand that you give us the ability to fly!
Certainly.
This is honestly one of the funniest endings in the entire series. Mike and Stu, the drivers of Hammerhead and Twisted Metal 2, demand for the ability to fly, and they gleefully jump off the building they're currently on and proceed to hit the pavement like sacks of shit. And the reveal?
Good thing these first-class tickets are refundable.
That is a genuine gutbuster right there. A true bit of simple but genius subversion. It's a simple ending, but for what it sets out to do, it succeeds wholeheartedly. I laugh every single time.
If I took the key, Mr. Creel was gonna die. Why couldn't he just have been nice to me?
Yet another revenge plot in black. Okay, to be fair, this one's only incidentally a revenge plot. Dollface is a woman working for a mask salesman named Mr. Creel. Dude is a complete nutjob who locks a mask over his desperately anxious employee for one mistake and gaslights her into believing it was her own fault. So all she wants is to have the key to unlock the mask, but when she wins, taking the key would activate a Rube Goldberg contraption which would shut her boss in an Iron Maiden type deal. And she takes it with gusto, but decides she doesn't want to take the mask off, realizing her new face is better than the old one. What I like about this ending is the character development it shows, realizing over the course of 3 cutscenes that she was never at fault. It was her abuser who was at fault. Realizing this gave her the strength to let Mr. Creel die painfully for what he did, even though she doesn't want to take the mask off anymore. The revenge on the abuser is the part she truly wanted. It's that character development that elevates this ending above all the other revenge endings. Well, except for one.
It was time for him to prove my innocence and clear my name.
To me, this is one of the most predictable endings in Twisted Metal Black. The entire framing device of Twisted Metal Black is that most everybody is a member of Blackwell Insane Asylum. At least that's the framing device until you get into some of the more meta aspects. So as soon as they showed Preacher, driver of Brimstone, killing the Antichrist, I knew the twist was going to be that the baby wasn't evil, there were no evil spirits in or around Preacher, all the people he killed were just regular people, and he was certifiably insane. And that's exactly what happened, and the only thing Calypso did was let him know. The end result is pretty cool though. He tries to make amends for his misdeeds in multiple ways, but finds he can never purge the memories of what he did, meaning he can't bring himself peace while he's still alive. So opts to find peace in the only other way possible.
A man cannot hide from himself. There is only one path before me.
That's all, folks. So yeah, as predictable as it is, the content of this ending is darkly compelling enough to elevate it above mediocrity. You don't pull the suicide card lightly, but I think it fits well here, punctuating a series of very messed up events with a proper conclusion. The last impression is always the lasting impression, and this certainly leaves a lasting impression.
Officer Carl Roberts is granted a world free of the high-octane competition.
Fittingly, one of the best endings in the first Twisted Metal game, at least to me, is also the canonical one. Sergeant Carl Roberts wins the tournament and wishes for the end of the Twisted Metal tournament. He wishes for a world without Twisted Metal. You think there's no way for Calypso to twist that wish, but twist it he does in the most spectacular way possible. Carl gets a world without Twisted Metal, as in he's shot into space, so he's no longer in a world with Twisted Metal. He's no longer in a world. That is sinister as hell, and definitely the most clever subversion of any wish in the game. In the Lost ending, it's not entirely made clear if he's sent to space, but he's sent to a black void, so the same point is brought across. It's funny how this is, to me, the best Outlaw ending, and they get progressively worse over time. It's everything a Twisted Metal ending should be. It's simple, but it's clever, sinister, gets the point across really well, and more than anything, isn't friggin' stupid.
Done.
Hammerhead's Lost ending is one of those ones where I can't help but just laugh my ass off at it every single time. You might be expecting them to wish for something stupid, you might be expecting a twist, but instead they don't even know what to wish for. Until they get an idea. And they wish for Calypso's babes. And without flinching, Calypso grants Mike and Dave's wish, no strings attached, no money down, and with admirable gusto. To me, the eagerness in Calypso is what really makes this one hilarious to me. It's like he has an attitude of, "F yeah guys, this is a wish I can respect the hell out of. Go get 'em, Tigers." Maybe the eventual meaninglessness of the women's affection will be their long-term consequences, but either way, it's a dumb ending, but I can't help but laugh my ass off at this ending every single time.
Enough of this! I wish this nightmare would end once and for all!
There are some wishes even I can't grant completely.
One of my favorite aspects of the Twisted Metal series is the idea that Marcus Kane and Needles Kane are the split personalities of the same person. They really doubled down on this in Head On, which is why this is one of my favorite endings in the series. He makes the same wish he did in the second game, more on that later, but this time when he awakens as his other personality, Needles. It's a great ending because it really showcases the endless loop that Marcus finds himself in, and the constant suffering he goes through, feeling as though his entire world is nothing more than a dream, but one that he's never able to truly wake up from. Even Calypso agrees that he'll never truly be able to grant his wish, because his wish is based on false beliefs. It's messed up, but a really intriguing ending.
I wanted him to remove the part of my brain that made me so sad whenever I took a human life.
Twisted Metal Black's version of Warthog is unlike any other version of the character. Cage isn't in the military, he's just the type of psychotic nutjob that psychotic nutjobs are afraid of. He loves murdering, but can't stand the part of his brain that makes him feel empathy for other human beings, so his wish is to have that part of his brain removed, the part that holds him back from being the perfect murderer. And he gets it. Not only that, but Calypso even throws in Edward Scissorhands. Free of charge. This ending is eerie as fuck. It's effective in just how creepy it is, and that's why I think it's a great ending. It really gets its point across and would probably give a more squeamish person a reason to be afraid while walking around in their house at night. The only thing holding it back is that it's one of the cut down endings, so the presentation suffers a bit. But still, the end result is something so sinister, so creepy, so eerie, that I can dig it like a shallow grave. Something Cage is probably well versed in.
But now I have a chance to get even with the man who pushed me over the edge and made Benny die.
In Twisted Metal Black, Mr. Grimm is not a Reaper of Souls, but rather a Vietnam War veteran who wears the skull of his former best friend, whom he was forced to eat in order to survive his internment. His wish, have the advisor for the Vietnamese that forced him to do what he did, brought before him. But as it turns out, Mr. Grimm developed a taste for human flesh, and there was only one way to get revenge on the man who forced Mr. Grimm to do what he did. That is completely messed up, and I am all for it. One of the reasons I love Twisted Metal Black as much as I do is the presentation just sticks with you. It's a game of psychos, freaks, and murderous rampages, and they revel in being as bleak and disturbing as possible. It's definitely a see-me-after class type of game, but it's edge-of-your-seat stuff, and Mr. Grimm's ending is a good example of that. The subject matter is compelling, the presentation sticks with you, it's dark, it's memorable, it's messed up, and I love it.
I wish that you become me, and I become you.
To me, the idea that Calypso doesn't actually have control over the wishes he grants is odd, but also intriguing. You see, usually if it's something he doesn't want to do, he just twists the wording. But Head On has, to my knowledge, the first case of Calypso granting a wish he didn't actually want to, when Needles Kane, after years of competing in the tournament, wants to run the tournament, to take Calypso's spot, so he wishes to swap places with Calypso, who has no choice but to oblige despite his objections. For the first time, making it seem like Calypso is merely a middleman for a more powerful entity. Immediately after this, Needles, now occupying Calypso's body, has Calypso shot. Or Sweet Tooth shot. However you want to look at it. This ending intrigues the hell out of me because it implies a larger intrigue of there being a higher power controlling Calypso and his powers, and the subject matter of Needles forcefully switching bodies and killing Calypso is a sick piece of storytelling. This ending is awesome.
Accelerate the process, whatever it takes to make him die faster!
Talk about endings that are informed by the characters' personalities. There aren't many better than Mr. Grimm's ending in Twisted Metal 2. Mr. Grimm is a soul junkie. He feasts on the souls of the dead, but people can't seem to die fast enough, so he's starved and constantly in withdrawal looking for his next hit. So Calypso uses his powers to plunge the world into chaos, eventually killing everyone. Mr. Grimm is satisfied, and then he runs out of souls to feast on, leaving him in eternal torment of withdrawal. This ending is incredibly messed up. Everything about it. the implied drug abuse, and the whole human race dying to satisfy one man, but it's incredibly compelling. The wish makes sense, the consequences almost make too much sense, and it's a beautiful bit of character work. I give this ending 2 thumbs up. Although it is a bit weird that Satan's whole thing about wanting to bring the best drivers into hell needed a competition when Calypso could have just plunged the world into eternal war with his powers. But then again, I guess his powers only work if you make a wish, so he was just looking for the right opportunity.
And yet, you asked me for this? Oh man.
But I think possibly the best example of an ending that brings across the character's personality through the ending might actually be Sweet Tooth from the very first game. Calypso explains that he could have had anything his heart desires, but what he wishes for is Crazy Harold, the lunch snack. It demonstrates with words alone just how unhinged Needles is, that his ultimate prize, his quote-unquote best friend, is a snack you can buy at the grocery store. Honestly, the Lost ending makes this even better, because not only does he get the snack itself, but he starts shooting up the place. And it's only stopped by this mysterious girl that he kidnapped. The kidnapping is never explained, but I'm sure that would have come up had this ending actually made the final cut. It's such a simple but effective demonstration of his erratic behavior. Proof, if proof be needed, that they really nailed it with the first game.
Where did you go?
People have speculated that Black, the driver of Manslaughter in, Twisted Metal Black, was sent by Calypso in a parallel universe to take out this universe's Calypso. God knows why that would be the case, but either way, his only goal is to kill Calypso. However, in a pretty badass turn of events, Calypso gives Black the slip and blows him to Kingdom Come. However, Black survives to kill Calypso another day. I find Black as a character to be conceptually really interesting, this force of nature that just exists for one purpose. And the fact that neither was able to kill the other leaves it on this really intriguing, not quite cliffhanger, which makes me really wish this game had a proper sequel. Despite being one of the weaker presented endings in Twisted Metal Black, this ending is just so effortlessly cool. Just like Jason Newsted. But it just misses out on the top 10.
Skip it up and down. Now that I'm out, there ain't no place for the doc to hide.
Man, this ending is satisfying as hell. No Face is probably my favorite one-off character in the entire series. Formerly Frank the Tank, he was just an average boxer caught in a bad situation with an opponent that rearranged his face quite literally. But the doctor who he was sent to had bet the farm on Frank and removed his eyes and tongue as petty revenge. I feel nothing but sympathy for Frank in this case. He did nothing wrong, and any harm he's caused was as a result of this doctor. So when No Face finally gets his wish to take revenge on the doctor who ruined his life, it's so cathartic to see. The presentation is bone-chilling, the wish makes sense, it's a great ending for a great character. I could see myself doing the same thing in his shoes. I would love to see No Face make a comeback in the future, but seeing as they didn't bring him back when they had the chance, I guess Frank doesn't count.
Is to let this world hear the wails and war cries of a dead man's soul. So be it!
So, confession time. I'm not really a fan of Rob Zombie anymore. When I was a teenager for sure, but these days I find his music a little bit too safe, a little bit too radio friendly. And in his recent albums, he's put more thought into the names of the albums than the actual music itself. But his music was completely inseparable from the 90s, and especially 90s video game soundtracks. So it was kind of inevitable that he would eventually guest star in a game. Step up, Twisted Metal 4. He has a meeting of the minds with Melvin before wishing for the world to hear the wails and war cries of a dead man's soul. Then they just cut to the music video for Super Beast. That's hilarious. That is too perfect. If you're gonna have a celebrity appearance in a game, that's how you do it.
Spare me the rhetoric. You know what I want.
If nothing else, Twisted Metal 4 has some bold and interesting ideas, chief among them being the premise. Sweet Tooth steals Calypso's Ring of Power and by proxy takes over the entire tournament, meaning Calypso has to compete to take back his own tournament. Of course, how it would eventually play out would probably be the most intriguing part to anybody playing the game, and it does not disappoint one bit, making this easily the best ending in the entire game for me. He shows up to take back what is rightfully his, and the struggle that ensues blows them both and the entire building to Kingdom Come. Now that's pretty friggin' sweet. Nothing more to it than that. They set something up, and they paid it off really, really well.
I know it's all a dream. Please, Calypso,
Help me.
I like when Twisted Metal becomes Twisted Meta and starts to acknowledge the relationship between player and player character. Never is this more apparent than with Roadkill in Twisted Metal 2. Well, except for maybe Minion in Black, but that's besides the point. Believing this entire game is part of some never-ending dream, his one wish is to finally be able to wake up. And so he does. It's been endlessly speculated about how this could possibly make sense. I believe that Calypso is a multidimensional being with godlike powers, and so instead of waking Marcus up, he commanded Marcus's consciousness to transcend into another reality where he's just waking up from a coma. I find the aspects wherein Marcus breaks the fourth wall and acknowledges the player, as well as the entire meaning behind his ending, to be endlessly intriguing and something you can speculate on for days, which is why it's one of my favorite endings in the entire series.
You stole my powers, Calypso, 11 years ago, stripping me of my birthright. Now it is time to pay the price.
It's very rare for Calypso to come across as absolutely helpless. Occasionally the person who wins the tournament gets one up on him, but usually it's because he's caught off guard or there's some trickery going on. But I don't recall a time when Calypso came across as completely helpless to stop someone as he did in Minion's Twisted Metal 2 ending. Minion hectically claps back at Calypso for taking his power and place amongst Satan's army as seen in the prequel comic. Calypso, fruitlessly groveling, gets sent straight to hell. That is one hell of an ending. Literally. I mean, really, I think it's self-evident why this ending is as good as it is. The drama is palpable, and it's unlike any other ending in the series. Truly another masterclass in telling a story in less than a minute.
How could I refuse? Now I had a chance to get the answers I needed.
It was generally accepted that after the first Twisted Metal game, Roadkill was synonymous with Marcus Kane. But since Marcus Kane was preoccupied being Minion in Black, they had to switch things up, so they gave the role of Roadkill to an amnesiac man whose wish is to get his memory back. Turns out he's an FBI agent. He infiltrated a group of terrorists in order to thwart their plans, and succeeded, though got himself amnesified in the process. It's a pretty cool story, and an act of heroism worth being proud of, but the twist is my favorite part. It dawns on him all too late that he's an FBI agent who's looking at the FBI's #2 most wanted man. One gunshot later and it's all over for him. It's such an expertly crafted story in such a short amount of time. One that you're discovering alongside John Doe himself, and the ending twist is something that shocks you just as much as it shocks him. Great piece of storytelling worthy of its spot on this list. Ironically, this is one of the most memorable endings on the list.
Oh, tonight, I'd finally get to cut her. Take me to her now!
Okay, so the way they portray Sweet Tooth in Twisted Metal 2012 is among some of my favorite character portrayals in the entire series. They just nail his descent into madness and his completely unhinged personality, and the ending does not disappoint either. He wishes to find the one that got away. His daughter, who was seemingly the only person he's ever been unable to kill. Totally makes sense. This is absolutely what somebody in his state of mind would want. And the twist is fantastic. Turns out Sophie Kane had been dead for 10 years as the trauma caused by what Needles had done directly led to her taking her own life. So Needles gets exactly what he wants, to find Sophie, but in the process ends up being buried alive so thoroughly it would make an early 2000s Triple H blush. Everything about this ending is executed to perfection. The presentation, the personalities, the wish, the twist that completely takes you off guard given the setup to the scene, everything. It's not quite my favorite, but it's getting pretty close.
Daddy? It's me, Krista! I'm back!
This one is honestly just sad, but the emotional gut punch is exactly why it's such a great ending. So Grasshopper is actually Calypso's daughter Krista, as I said earlier, who died in the car crash that also killed Calypso himself. Yes, Calypso, you did die. You didn't almost die. However, Krista was rebuilt by the LAPD, RoboCop style, and fitted with a bomb, specifically so they could get someone close to Calypso to go kablooey. I guess they picked her because of the family connection and the fact that she was already a skilled driver. Either way, this ending shows some real emotional depth to Calypso that you don't often get to see. Despite being a sadistic monster, he has enough capacity for love that he's willing to die in a painful explosion comforting his only child. Kinda heartbreaking, and really displays how thin the line is between human and monster. It's a gut-wrenching but beautiful ending for a game that revels so much in violence and destruction.
And ask me for the one prize he wanted more than anything. The strength to face his father, who had bound him in this hellish contraption over 30 years ago.
If I had to guess, I think Single Track was positioning Axel as the new face of the franchise in Twisted Metal 2. He got the front cover treatment, and the character who got the front cover treatment in the previous game, Sweet Tooth, isn't even available by default. But that was kind of abandoned when 989 Studios took over. Either way, Axel's ending is the best in the entire game for me. He was trapped in a hellish contraption, and his wish is to be able to face the person who put him in it. His own father. And so he does. The exchange between the two is pretty gripping despite the fact that we don't really know either of these characters.
Gonna take 10 more years on the wheels to set you right. You need to be taught a lesson.
No, Father, I've learned my lesson. Let me show you what I've learned.
And in an act of defiance to take back control of his own life, Axel rips his own arms off to free himself. That is, honestly, one of the most badass things I have ever seen. He walks away, permanently disfigured, possibly bleeding out, but in control of his own life. There's nothing more that need be said. There is no other word that can adequately describe this ending other than badass.
I asked him to make good on his promise, to bring an end to all the pain, to take away my curse.
I spent the past little while really trying to decide if this was my favorite ending. Is it the most compelling? Maybe not. Does it have the highest production value? Maybe not. Is it the best ending from a character perspective? Maybe not. But for me, it's the ending that just keeps popping into my head whenever I consider what my favorite ending in the series is. It does everything that a good ending should do. So basically, Needles Kane in Twisted Metal Black had a curse put on him by Preacher, so that he would live in eternal agony with his head on fire as punishment for his sins, which I believe is the only time the flaming head thing gets addressed. And Calypso offers him a solution, a vial of Preacher's blood. It will end the curse, but the curse will reactivate as soon as he kills again. So after it's all said and done, Needles refuses the vial because he values murder over ending his own suffering. And then, in my favorite shot in the entire series, cuts off Calypso's entire fucking head in a single swipe, driving off into the night happy to murder again. Every single second is just brimming with personality, bringing out Sweet Tooth's character in every action. The refusal of the solution and the sudden reverse twist when he kills Calypso is just perfectly presented. Everything about it just feels so badass. Sweet Tooth's voice acting is immaculate and really sells the weight of this ending, and the imagery on display is bone-chilling.
I had to decide. It took me all of 10 seconds. Let's face it, boys and girls. A man has to have his priorities.
Then the fact that he'd rather live in eternal agony than give up his murderous ways is so dark, but so perfectly sells the state of his mentality. Everything about this ending is just pitch perfect for me. Some people may not like Black for the sudden tonal shift and for being maybe a bit edgelord, but there's a reason why it's my favorite game in the series. When it hits just right, it's an all-time classic. This ending feels like the perfect reward for beating the story mode. Sweet Tooth was obviously the star of the game if the front cover was anything to go by, and they went out of their way to do him proper justice, and they definitely succeeded, full stop. Okay, wow, that ended up being a lot beefier than I anticipated. This was not easy. There were quite a few endings that I could recite off the top of my head, but many more, especially in the middle, where I struggled to remember a single thing about the endings. So there was a lot of struggle to properly place this list, and even now I'm second-guessing myself on quite a few of these endings. But that's that. 104 endings ranked from worst to best. I'd say on average, Twisted Metal 2 probably had the best endings, but it was a close call between that, Black, and Head On. Meanwhile, Twisted Metal 3 was easily the bottom of the pack on average, followed by Small Brawl, with Twisted Metal 1 and 4 pretty much the center of the pack here. Fun stuff. Do you agree? Do you disagree? Which ending got snubbed? Let me know in the comment section, but don't forget, this is all my own opinion. And I'm sure all of our rankings would be very different, so no need to flip the script over one guy's rankings. This was probably the hardest, but also most rewarding video I've ever had the pleasure of making. So I'd appreciate it if you could leave a like and subscribe to my channel for more. Also hit the bell icon. I've been the King of Snark Style right here on Tactical Bacon Productions, and I thank you for playing Twisted Metal.